All right, so now with this font, I'm going to find the best solution I can. But I'm likely going to have to modify it. In fact, I'm certain of it. But you'll see you have some limited options while it's still a regular font. So I could bend it, I could do all that stuff, but what I want to do is turn this now, which are just solid vector shapes. I want to turn them into having strokes. And you can do that to any font. You can convert it to having no fill and having a stroke instead. And I can play with the thickness of that stroke. So I want it to kind of fit in with the rest of my illustration and that drop shadow. I can vary that stroke in other ways, should be able to. Depending on the font. I think that's pretty good though. But I cannot alter those shapes as it is. I can't turn that Z into looking more like a Z. I can't even stretch it out really extremely until I do this. With the large selection tool, I click on that font layer. And notice how I have every other layer locked so I can't mess it up. And I right click on it. And I select it, right click. I want to be able to create outlines. And why is it not letting me? It's right there. You can also right click and change fonts right from here if you wanted to, which can be a really helpful solution too. So I'm not sure why it's not giving me the create outlines option. Haven't had that issue before. Maybe because I made it a stroke instead of a fill. So let me make it a fill, and yes, so that's why. So I know I'm going to eventually want to create outlines or make strokes, but in order to create the outlines to have it as a vector that I can modify, I need to have it as just a black fill. And then I right click, I say create outlines. And now they're just individual vectors. So there's no like correcting my spelling at this point now. Now on this layer, it's just a group of different font shapes. But that allows me to shrink it, stretch it, modify it, make it what I need. And I want to be inspired by the Ritz logo. Let me open that up in the background there. And so, how can I make it kind of fit? It's blocky, the T relates, the I relates pretty well, but the R, I want to add that curve in. The Z, I need to look like a Z instead of a backwards 2. So there's a bunch of things I can do. Easiest is probably just redrawing it. Remember, go through one point, and through another. Same thing with the R. Once you've created outlines, you can modify as you see fit. A little bit at a time, both the inside and the outside. There's a lot of advantages to having it be outlines, because I can take each shape now and treat them independently. So I can make the R a little bit bigger than everything else, then take all of the others and move them individually. I can just shrink the Z, for instance. I feel like it's too big and I need to redraw just the Z as well. Sharpen it up. And this is how font designers will actually make their own unique fonts. There are tools you can buy that will then link them up to the font keys so that they're a TTF file that you can use. That's for a graphic design class. For now, we just want the best font solutions we can come up with. Now, the hardest thing for me personally is just making everything really clean. And you see I have curves and everything in there. So then I have to go in, I have to use my knowledge of Illustrator. And I have to adjust certain points, certain anchors, get rid of certain curves so that they're straight. Adjust some until they're perfectly horizontal. Get rid of the handles. Like a logo type, you want to be as controlled and as clean as possible. And if I need to, I can just delete anchor points. And move handles in when I need. That doesn't work. There we go. All right. Now this also gives me exact control of the kerning and the leading between each letter. I can move each letter independently, I can size each letter independently. And that will give me a lot more design success as I'm working on it. Remember, to get rid of the curves, you just move the handles back to their anchor with the small selection tool. So I'm in editing mode here. Whoops. So I'm on the delete anchor point, because sometimes you just don't need the anchor point. The best font design is very clean without it. And then I just hold down Command to get to the small selection, so I can see where all the curves are. So there's curve there, but I want those. And otherwise, yeah, that looks pretty good. So now I can play with a stroke solution here. If you need to, you can turn on rulers and you can pull down a guideline. I guess I want that to line up. And you plot it best you can. Right now I have a white stroke around it. If I select it all, I have it on its own layer. I can just swap those two. So I have a white fill and a black stroke. Or I have no fill at all and just an outline stroke, and I wanted it to be at least 4. Like so. And just like Photoshop, you can use your grid, with Command apostrophe, or you can use your guides and toggle them off with Command semicolon and get everything placed. And I'm going to lock my layers and move some of the ones around. Just using the large selection key and the arrows. So Putin on the Ritz. The stroke works well, but I might need a little bit more spacing in between my letters, so I have to do that individually now. It's a small selection tool, selecting each one, just moving it. Whoops. Whoops. It's nice to be able to use Command Z to go backwards. Selecting it. Here, let's try large selection tool and then moving it independently. So let's select the Z and then just use the arrow keys. And this again is the leading, the spacing between each letter. You want to make sure you've given it some thought, and readability is incredibly important. So since I want that outline, I need to also make sure that I space them out so that they're still readable and distinct from each other as a vector. Strokes are less forgiving, so they'll show you if something's slightly soft. Sure enough, there are some curves I wasn't aware of, and I want to get rid of those. The stroke showed me that. I do like this slight curve, just gives the Z a little bit of fun. I'll go back to the delete anchor point, get rid of some of these. All right. So now I have my finished black and white vector type solution. Let me turn off the layers I'm not using. There it is. I can see what I like and what I don't like about it. There's certain things about this Putin one I don't like.